Today we're going to look at how to use a long line or a long leash. This is going to help you easily manage those dogs who have a less than reliable recall. And let's face it, no dog is perfect, no person is perfect, and it's really important to have a safety measure in place like a long line. Being confident with a long line is going to mean that you're going to have more confidence on walks with your dog. Your dog is going to have a little bit more freedom, and there's less of those awkward moments where you can't call your dog away from something. This is a great skill for anyone, but I especially recommend it for puppies and adolescents. First thing you're going to do is find a long line that you like. So there's a few different options you can go for, and I've got a couple to show you here that I have. The one I use most often is a Biothane long line. Looks like this. The reason why I use these is because they're really easy to clean. I find them easy to handle and wrap up as well. Also in really cute colors. And it's not just cute colors, it's easy to find them and see them in the grass. And this one also comes with a little holder as well, so it's easy to carry around and hang up, and it's not getting tangled as much. They do generally get less tangled because of the material as well, but some people prefer a fabric, and I've used these ones before as well, so shows how organized I am with my long lines. With this one too, you can get options that don't have a handle, and I really like these for being able to trail along behind the dog, and it's not going to get caught in anything. Sometimes you have to be careful with something that comes with a loop, because it could get stuck and caught on something and jerk your dog back. So the handleless ones are a really good option for that. They come in different lengths as well. You can get them 5 meter, 10 meter, 20 meter. I generally suggest starting with a 5 meter just so you can get a hang of it. And then you can start progressing to a longer line as you feel more comfortable, and if you think that having a longer line is going to be more appropriate for where you're going. So this first one I do here, this is actually the one I prefer, is like a bow loop. So it's just looping and then grabbing from the top and the bottom. And the second one is a more generic loop. You can see I'm not as practiced with this one because I prefer the bow. With this, it's just looping it around your hand, so making a circle and grabbing it as it comes around. Mine isn't the most elegant looking, but it works. When you start leading your dog around with the long line, you are going to have the bunched up bit in one hand, and you're going to have your other hand guiding the line. So you're going to use your dominant hand to guide the line. I'm left-handed, so I use my left hand to guide it. So that is going to help you reel it in. It's going to help you let it out, and it's also going to help you keep that line off the ground. So here you can see I've got my dominant hand, my left hand is guiding, trying to keep the lead nice and loose between me and the dog at all times, and keeping it high as well. And you'll see in a second why we keep it high. For instances like this, where our dog starts rolling in something smelly probably, and because I've kept it high and off the ground, he hasn't gotten tangled in it. If we let it drag, then they're going to get stuck. And then here you can see I'm wrapping it up as he comes closer and letting it out as he goes away. Wrapping it as he comes closer and then letting it out as he goes away. And that looseness between me and the dog is really important. And sometimes they pick up sticks as well. Benny is a very good real life example. So it's really good to practice that letting it out and reeling it in. One thing I suggest to practice is hooking it onto a stable object like a hook in the wall or something that's not going to move, that's going to be stable, so you can practice the reeling it in and then letting it out with something that's not going to be moving around. Top tips here are keeping it loose and keeping it off the ground. So that keeping it off the ground is going to make sure it doesn't get tangled up in your dog's legs. And keeping it loose means that it's nice and relaxing for your dog. You're not straining against each other. If it's too tight, then you need to let it out a little bit. My other tip is to make sure you use a harness when you are working with a long line. The reason for this is because the dog often doesn't know where the end of the line is. And if they suddenly hit the end of the line while they're wearing a collar, it's going to jerk them back. And that's going to be very uncomfortable, and it's going to create a negative association with that long line. So clipping it on the back of a harness is the safest way to go if you're using a long line. And saying that, you want to get your dog used to where the end of the line is. So if you've got a 5-meter line, for example, and then the next day you're using a 10-meter line, your dog's not going to know when it's going to go tight. So I often call the dog back to me before it gets completely tight, so they're not surprised by that jerk. You could teach them a cue as well. That means that the end of the line is coming, just so that they're aware and they're not suddenly startled by it jerking back. Another thing you can do with a long line that I mentioned before with the handles, you can drop it. So what's great about a long line that can trail behind your dog is that they can have that freedom, but then you have the reassurance and the safety that if you think your dog is going to get distracted by something, you can just pick it up instead of having to chase your dog around and trying to grab their harness or trying to grab their collar and put their lead back on. You've got the safety net of the long line and your dog has a little bit more freedom. So it's not restricting, it's a safety measure, and it makes your life so much easier if you're working on recall with your dog. The first time I handled a long line was when I was training for puppy school to be a puppy school tutor, and it was attached to an adolescent Vizsla who was beautiful and lovely but a bit crazy, and it was a room full of people, so I had to navigate a Vizsla puppy, never having had a long line before, running around a room full of people. So I totally understand how confusing it can be and how fiddly it can be, but if you just practice a little bit and just get used to that motion, it becomes second nature. I don't even think about it anymore, and I find it so useful when I'm training, when I'm walking. There's many places where I don't feel comfortable letting a dog off lead, but I don't want them to be restricted to a shorter lead, so the long line is perfect. So I highly recommend adding this to your kit. It is going to be a lifesaver for you. Find one that works for you and have a little practice with it. If you found this useful, let me know. You can like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff that you're meant to do on YouTube. If this is something you're interested in, if you want more training tips, if you want more info about the dog world, I'm also on Instagram at Encore Dogs. And if you're based around West London, you can book a session with me. So head to my website, encoredogs.com, if you'd like to work with me. See you next time. Bye.